Welcome to the Athens Municipal Arts Commission meeting on this Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. I officially call this meeting to order. Prior to legislative updates, we do have two changes in the agenda. The first change is that we're going to be moving the Carol Alt mural update from section 7, the announcements and other business, to the top of section 4 for ongoing public projects, so that way Carol doesn't have to hang out forever. The next change is that we're going to be allotting 40 minutes to the Friends of Arts West update under section 4, subsection now B. We'll start with Leslie Schaller giving that 501c3/6 information session and allow for at least 20 minutes for her discussion and then our discussion with her. And then we'll move on to the general updates. Let's see. So those are the end of the changes. Do I have a motion to accept the changes to the agenda? It looks like Carol so moved, even though she's muted. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Scott, thank you very much. All in favor? Looks like we're good. Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. So those differences will be adhered to during the meeting. So first up, we're going to do legislative updates. Looks like Andrew is the only one that's here that can do that.
I'll make it easy. There are no legislative updates that I'm aware of for this evening.
I know one.
Carol knows one.
Carol.
After our last meeting on the 15th, council voted to extend Wendy McVicker's term for the next year. So that is done. I called her the next day and she's delighted. And so we're good to go.
Thank you, Carol. I do have not really a legislative update, but just an FYI that City Council is going through a handful of the commissioners and advisory boards and things like that to go through terms. So talking about term limits and updating all that information. So just FYI, once we hear some more solid information, we'll make sure that everybody knows the new term, if there's term limits, what that process is going to look like. Okay, so next we need to approve the minutes from this past meeting from February 10th. Does anybody have any updates for that? I did have one, Josh, that under, let's see, clarifying under that section B, Friends of Arts West, instead of saying Chelsea met with the new chair of APRD, say that Chelsea and the rest of the ad hoc committee met with Terry, Andrew, and Alan Swank, the new chair, just to make sure that we have that clarifying information. I can email that to you if that makes it easier.
Yeah, please email that to me so I can just verify for accuracy. If I screwed it up once, I might screw it up again. So,
no worries, I gotcha.
Thank you.
Carol, do we approve the minutes with that update?
You approve it as corrected.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
So moved.
Beth? Second? Scott? All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, moving on. So, Arts West update. I don't know if Andrew has heard anything. Oh, Carol.
Oh, okay. Never mind. You're putting Carol in under ongoing projects. Got it.
Correct. The only Arts West update that I have is that I very briefly saw Emily Beveridge driving down a street that I live nearby, and she mentioned that she is going to be looking into the Save Our Stages CARES Act money because there is You are able to apply for it if you're part of a municipality. There are some exceptions. I briefly looked at it today. I haven't been able to get into the nitty-gritty myself, but I know that she is looking into that grant funding. And also, we as the Friends of Arts West ad hoc committee had a great meeting with Terry a couple weeks ago, and she did give us a rundown of what the new org structure is. And so basically Arts West, or Emily specifically, that program specialist, will be now supervised by the program operations manager, which is Erin Helms, who has been working at the community center for several years. So just FYI that now Emily Beveridge is being supervised by a different position. Those are the only updates that I have in regards to Arts West. Yes, Carol.
Also yesterday, I spoke with Emily. I went online to a webinar called Shuttered Venues Grant. And it was a bit over my head, but I muddled through it and called Emily and sent her the information, and she was going to follow up on that. So that's another possibility, and that's directly tied to the legislation that passed this afternoon.
Awesome. Scott, did you have something to add? I thought I saw your hand go up.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, and it's, I don't want to take up too much time. And like I had told you previously, I have to leave shortly after 6, but I'm actually the Southern Ohio representative for the National Independent Venue Association now. So we are helping connect venues now, and especially now that we know that people can apply for PPP2 and still get the SVOG grants. I meet with them weekly on Thursdays. So if you want to send her my way as well, I could reach out to Emily too. I could probably help kind of get through some of that stuff. I've been a part of those meetings for the past, I don't know, I guess since November. So that, I don't know, I might have some good information for you on that too. I just wanted to point that out.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I had to mute myself for a hot second. Scott, if you wanted to go ahead and reach out to Emily, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Offer your services and knowledge. That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, moving on to ongoing public projects. Carol Patterson, did you want to introduce Carol Alt?
Well, yes, one Carol to another. I was delighted when Carol called just a couple days ago that she now has some sketches and is working very closely with Keith Weil. And so we're anxious to hear where they are in terms of considerations for a Carpenter Street mural on that god-awful wall.
Soon to be a much better wall. So the email would not send. I don't know why. I will try once again to share these sketches through Zoom.
Carol, I've got 3 photographs here, Carol. Only 3 came through, but if you'd like me to share those, I will.
Yes, that'd be awesome.
Okay. And you can just go ahead and tell me to switch to another one when you're ready. I'll share them right now.
Do the one that's a full, it's superimposed on a photo of the house. Do that one first, if you would. That one. Okay, so this is a rough sketch, and we obviously have no color. We're going to make a few adaptations to this, but the house has been called Level 42 and has been painted, that Level 42 has been painted on the wall in many different places since I've owned the place. And as Scott and I were originally talking, it was like, well, what's Level 42? And I'm going, I don't know what it is, but it sounds like a blues club to me. And with Athens having such a rich live music scene, I wanted to include music. And I also wanted to have something that would have a little bit of a story that maybe would give a sense of hope or purpose or whatever, something that the community would enjoy looking at, that kids might enjoy looking at, and that every time you look at it, you might see something more, something a little different. So what we have ended up here are two kind of stories. One travels downhill, that's left to right on your screen, and the other handle goes uphill, the reverse direction. Kind of center, you can see level 42 in big letters, and you can see our musicians. The dog is there, but he's going to be elsewhere because that's not a good place for him. But over to the left, you see a hand throwing some coins into the busker's bucket. And some of those miss the bucket and go down the grate and into the plumbing. And they travel down the plumbing, downhill, into these various underground places. What might be underground in that hill? To your far right, it's hard to see on this, but the upper little part of that is a cat and a fishbowl, and the bottom part is the fishbowl. So the cat knocks over the fishbowl. The fish gets knocked down into the sewer pipes, and he ends up, next frame up, in kind of a vending machine with other things that have fallen down the sewer pipe. And he has little people who get gold coins that appeared out of nowhere from the buskers and open the vending machine to get something out, and the fish comes out and into more of the pipes. This whole fish thing is a Chinese folk story that Keith thought about and brought in here about a young fish who kept trying and trying and trying to go uphill, and eventually, through the kindness of strangers, was able to make it all the way upstream to the head of the waters and was transformed into a dragon. So he will make his way up the mural, and when he gets to the bottom of the stairs, if you look really closely, you can see him climbing the stairs, the water, and then there, right under level 42, is the dragon. So that is where we are at so far. Thoughts, comments? And if you want to show them the close-up of the buskers or of the hand, you can see a little bit. Like I said, we're going to move the dog, so he's down there scratching, and maybe he's the one that knocks the bucket over. We're not sure yet. And you can see our dragon. And then there's the hands on the upper part. And I love this Rube Goldberg contraption here for the sewer pipes. I think that's kind of funny. Okay, so that's all I have for you. What do you have for me?
I love that it's a story. I love that there is rhyme and reason to something that is so elaborate, and that it is entertaining and fun. I think it's going to be a really great addition to the wall. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Andrew.
Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. I love stories and narratives, even if they're abstract and we have to piece them together on our own. I think it gives us just enough to grip onto, but we can also kind of use our imagination to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's wonderful. Just FYI, music theme is a good idea, because Level 42 was a jazz
music group in the 80s.
A band from the 80s. And that's why it was named that. I mean, that's...
Mm-hmm. And something else we learned about this, when I was actually painting in one of my apartments, and somebody was down helping me, and he played this old cassette tape. I was like, oh my God, I really like that music. It's kind of like Earth, Wind, and Fire, but jazzier, edgy, you know? And he said, oh, it's Level 42. And I was like, duh. So then I looked up Level 42, and you know how they got their name? It came from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and what is the answer to everything? It's 42.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I love this. It kept coming together.
Right. That's wonderful.
So a couple things in the chat that I want to make sure to make note of, that Brandon Thompson, one of his favorite songs is actually a Level 42 song called Something About You. So I'm going to have to look that up because I don't know that song. And then somebody, looks like Ellen Swank, asked about what the funding model for this is. And since it is a privately owned wall, that it is privately funded. So by Carol. And thank you, Andrew, for answering that question. And also, I really like it. I like the Art Deco also, with the stylization of the Art Deco is really cool. What do you want, Carol?
I love it, love it, love it. Reminder that we discovered that we're supposed to be having identifying plaques or something on artwork that we do. So that's something to think about, Carol, as you and Keith work forward. Might there be an identifying little plaque somewhere that tells a little bit of this story?
You know, this is something I started thinking about 2 days ago. And my intention was to put a colorized sketch of it and frame it with the story and put it inside the house. So all the tenants would know the secret to the story as they had guests, etc. So I don't know if that's something that we can actually get on the wall or not. And I will certainly put that up to Keith. And we still have a little bit of space on the uphill side that maybe some verbiage could go in there.
Fantastic.
Cool. I'm glad you are receptive, because Keith and I are really excited about this. So, I do have one of, I will check that out, Alan. I just saw his little chat thing. So I do have one other thing, and that is when it comes time to prep the wall and then paint the wall, should I go directly to public safety to arrange to have the sidewalk closed off, or to pick up cones, or what do I do next?
That goes through me directly.
Okay.
So if you reach out to me, I handle those requests.
Okay, great. And how far in advance do I need to make those requests?
I need 3 business days to turn it around.
Oh, I can do that. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, well, if you have nothing else for me, thank you for your time. And again, I am so excited about being able to do this project that's meaningful to me and my daughter. And it's going to be, I think, a really cool public work. I'm just very excited about it.
Yeah, thank you for adding to the art of Athens. This is wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, that's exciting. I look forward to seeing that. Let's see, we're going to move on to the Friends of Arts West update, but we will start with Leslie Schaller, give her 20 minutes to discuss those 501c3 6 options. Take it away, Leslie.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. And thanks for having me back. I think it's been 2 months since I've seen all your smiling faces. And boy, what a fun commission to be on. So, I spend my life training and presenting on Zoom, it seems like, all day long. So I'm going to first ask for forgiveness. I'm going to share my screen and bring a PowerPoint presentation up. But my intention this evening is to just share some information and then have a conversation. So hopefully it will not feel too nonprofit-y in terms of information that you're going to be burdened with this evening. So as you know, I'm the Director of Programs at the Appalachian Center for Economic Networks, and we work with a lot of other nonprofits, particularly as partners, but interestingly, we help a number of organizations start and secure both nonprofit status and then tax exemption. In fact, we have a number of nonprofits in our business incubators. You might know some of them. Community Food Initiatives or the Athens Village are 2 of the nonprofits on our Athens campus here. And I think what sometimes people get confused about is that I'm registered with the state of Ohio as a nonprofit, and I will certainly encourage you to check out the Secretary of State's information guides. They have all sorts of great resources on their website, but they have, I think, a really user-friendly handbook in terms of how to start a nonprofit organization in Ohio. So some of the discussions we've been having as AMAC and the ad hoc group is, how do we create some perhaps additional capacity so that arts and culture, the creative economies in Athens, the city of Athens, can really be more well nurtured and fostered, I think, with additional fundraising options. It also might include, some other needs that are performed over time as well. So again, I'm not going to read this stuff aloud to you. We'll share this PowerPoint. And again, I'm trying to encourage you to maybe check on some of the other resources. I think where folks, as I mentioned, get confused is you really, as you're getting started, need to have a clear vision of what your intentions are to start a nonprofit. And I think many folks are looking to start a nonprofit corporation because they want to engage in work that's going to improve their communities. But they also want to make sure that they are protected from any liability. So, for example, many nonprofit corporations are going to first organize through the state of Ohio, but then also probably look at tax-exempt options as well, especially when it comes to fundraising. But if you're not interested in going through the tax exemption, it might be that you have a short-time purpose, or you're not acquiring assets, you're not going to hire staff, you're not really in it for sort of the long haul. So it might be a nonprofit that has a shorter time frame in terms of what you want to accomplish. I think what we've been trying to pursue in terms of this conversation, certainly within the ad hoc group, is how do we create more capacity, whether that's providing or augmenting additional services, or just being able to take advantage, so to speak, of some of the other financial opportunities that present themselves for nonprofits. We might think that, well, as a municipality, can't we tap into some of this funding? But unfortunately, a lot of grant programs, whether they're public or private, have stipulations that would disallow a city, a municipality to apply for funding. So in terms of tax exempt status, there's a couple different routes that one can go. The IRS code recognizes more than 20 different types of tax exempt entities. Again, I'm not a tax attorney, but there's a lot of great information out there, and I can send you to some of these resources. Oftentimes, you're looking for tax exemption after you've been formed, you have your board of directors, you have clear articles of incorporation and bylaws prepared, and then you're going to take that next step and apply for IRS status. So there's a couple different ways that you can pursue tax exemptions. And we've talked a little bit about it in the past, but I think probably what would be most pertinent to some of the needs as we try to leverage more capacity for arts and culture and the creative industries of our town. The 501c3 could be a status. I think that has the greatest appeal, and some of the conversations that the ad hoc group has had with other city representatives, as well as Alan as the new head of the APR advisory committee, I guess. Are you a committee? You're not a commission. I think this has more appeal than a 501c6, but I am going to cover both. So the biggest challenge probably with the 501c3 is that you have to be very cautious in terms of lobbying. And I think in terms of the goals for any 501c3 that would be accompanying the needs for AMAC or even for Arts West, the C3 probably would be preferable because there isn't at this point in time any intention to do any sort of lobbying or even advocacy work at this point in time. And this is where folks can get into trouble in terms of choosing the appropriate status. Oftentimes, the 501c3s are typically business leagues. So, for instance, a lot of our area's Chamber of Commerces are set up as a C6. And oftentimes they choose to be a C6 because that gives them the tax exemption, but it also allows them to lobby in a way that is germane to accomplishing the exact purposes without jeopardizing its exemption. So a chamber, I think, is a great example of a 501c6. They might be working with elected officials or various agencies, and they might be lobbying on behalf of the chamber's members. Maybe they're a group of small business owners. So this allows them to still remain tax exempt, but also not be in violation if they were a C3. So this is, again, broad brushstrokes here. I know Chelsea and Brandon, we've all been working together as the ad hoc group. We've reviewed some of these options. We've looked at other, I would say, models that might be replicable for us in our community. And really being able to figure out what is the appropriate nonprofit status, what is the mission and vision of that nonprofit, who will assume the various roles of that nonprofit as a board of directors or a board of trustees, and then what is the real intention or purpose of that nonprofit. That's going to help you or really guide you as to what tax exemption status one would want to pursue. I think that's, this is just the ever shameful AceNet infomercial. If you would like to know more about our services or get better connected with what we do. So I'm going to go back to the 501c3 screen for a minute, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will stop this slide for a minute, but also show you the handbook that the Secretary of State puts out. Again, I think this is a great resource just to get started in terms of, and you can see both my slides. Wrong one. It's one of my kitchen incubator ones. Sorry. Stop sharing. There's always something that just doesn't go quite right on Zoom, no matter how many times I try. So I may have already closed that down. So let's just talk at this point. We can field some questions if people need a little more clarity, or I would certainly invite Chelsea and Brandon to maybe explore a little bit more with the Arts Commission members in terms of some of our latest thinking. Does that sound right, Chelsea?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions specifically about the differences of a 501c3 or 6 before we kind of move on to what the ad hoc committee has been working on? Yeah, Scott.
I guess what you were saying about a C6 would be more, that'd be a better idea if you were planning on hiring a lobbyist. Is that what you're saying?
We're doing any kind of lobbying.
Okay.
Even if it's a group of volunteers, who are operational as a board of directors, you can get into trouble if you're a C3 as opposed to a C6.
That's really helpful information. Actually, I have another group that I'm meeting with tomorrow that is a bunch of venue operators that are trying to decide. We're not really represented by Ohio Arts Council so much, all these independent venues. So creating an organization, and they were talking about doing a C3 as opposed to a C6. But the main goal is to actually lobby. So I was just wondering, I don't mean to take away from anything else. This is very interesting information, and I'm definitely going to be checking out this handbook. I appreciate it.
And Josh Brown and I have had these conversations too. So if I can be of help as you move forward on that. I mean, I think some good examples would be farmers markets often are a C6, art guilds or art co-op, any type of artisan maker association. Oftentimes they will organize as either a C3 because they're looking for additional fundraising support through the application of grants. But if they are really more interested in advocating on behalf of individual artists or makers, then the C6 might be more appropriate. And that's where I think people, really have to explore and examine first and foremost what sort of nonprofit status they want. What is their intention? What's their mission? What's their vision? Because you might get started as a C3 and then you decide, oh, really, all we would really want to do is lobby elected officials. Well, then you might find yourself in a little bit of trouble.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
I have a question.
Go for it, Carol.
I read somewhere, and I think I've seen both sides of this question, but that the 6 can't be a government entity applying for it. Does that put us not even able to do the 6?
You would not be able to apply. For instance, the representatives on AMAC could not officially be the board of directors and be the applicant. You would have to have a different representation on a board. So yes, the city could not be a governmental, for any sort of governmental formation, really cannot be a C6.
We knew that none of us could be on the board, but this seemed to imply that a municipality couldn't be a part of a 501c3, whatever, 6. That's the one. So that's something that caught my eye and seemed to me like it could just eliminate that right off the top. And so just move right along with the 3.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a tax attorney in terms of tax exemptions.
Right.
But I would explore that. I think, for instance, you could have a chamber of commerce and you could have a department head from a municipality as a board member of that chamber of commerce. But they are, they might be holding space and sort of representing the interests of city government, but they are not there in the name of city government as a member. The city is not representing themselves as the city per se in a C6. It's confusing.
Well, we appreciate that you shared with us all of your knowledge, because I definitely learned something, even though I went through all of that information that you sent a week or so ago. So it's nice to hear those differences. Any other questions in regards specifically to nonprofit and nonprofit status? If not, we'll go ahead and move on to kind of what the ad hoc committee has been up to. And I'll go ahead and start. We have this group has been mainly on like a fact-finding mission, just trying to make sure that we know the hierarchy within the city of who we really should be talking to, who makes those ultimate decisions, and just making sure that we're all transparent in these next steps. Now, we did find out, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, that the Rec Advisory Board, one of their members, Shauna Schweitzer, has already applied for a 501c3 for a Friends of Arts, Parks, and Rec department. And so we had, as a group, we had a discussion during that meeting. Unfortunately, Brandon had to leave halfway through it, so he was not part of that full discussion. So we don't, so we as the ad hoc committee don't really feel like we need to be making any major decisions like tonight and or soon, because we still want to have more discussions on this. But we did have the discussion about like just letting the Friends of be the Friends of Arts, Parks, and Rec, but we want to make sure that there is really high arts representation at that board of trustees, or however they decide to form it, making sure that there is somebody who is going to be talking about the arts and making sure that those grant opportunities are happening. We want to keep that racial equity piece at the forefront of anything that happens. So we discussed that. I believe it was the top of last week. And I know that Terry was going to be meeting with Shauna regarding this last Friday. I have not heard an update because Terry was going to talk to Shauna about having more arts representation on the board and making sure that, you know, we all have a seat at that table, and that we are part of that initial process to create that mission and vision and everything like that. So we have not heard any updates about that. Now, moving forward from that, Sherry and I were the only ones that were able to meet this past Monday to kind of debrief that meeting, but also have a different conversation on, instead of creating a Friends of Arts West, why don't we create a arts alliance? So like an Athens Arts Alliance that's not just specifically for Arts West, but for all arts in the Athens area. That can be that hub for like those major NEA grants that has those connections to all of the arts entities within the area. And, you know, hopefully work towards building that capacity for all of the arts organizations and artists and things like that. So that was a very brief discussion that we had on Monday. I was able to send a very brief point both to Leslie and Brandon, but we all have, myself included, have been very busy the past couple of weeks, and so it's been hard to touch base. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I will let Leslie and Brandon do some talking, so I'm not the only one talking.
So what I would really like to get a sense, oh, sorry, did I interrupt you, Chelsea?
No, Beth looks like she had a question, but why don't you go ahead and talk, and then we'll see if...
Okay, I'll be quick, and then Beth, we can answer your question. I think what I'm concerned about now is I think it would be problematic to have like a Friends of APR and then a Friends of Arts West, or, you know, do we need, and I know Andrew has talked about this as well in other meetings, do we need to go back to a more comprehensive sort of nonprofit partner that would be more representative of an area arts alliance? Way back in the 90s. ACENET staff helped the Athens Area Arts Alliance form and secure 501c3 status. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 96, 97. And that was more focused on Athens County as a sort of larger umbrella for the arts. So we have a history of being able to create arts alliances in the past, and now might be the time to think about that as well. My question for you is, what's the focus? Is it more City of Athens centric, or is it something a little bit larger? Obviously, there's county commissioners in Athens that are also interested. So it's a slightly bigger conversation that we might be headed towards.
So that's really interesting, because I immediately, Chelsea, started thinking about, okay, so is this taking us back to the AACA?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, what exactly was, I don't recall, but the mission, right, and vision of that group, and is it essentially the same sort of thing or not? Hearing this piece of history, though, Leslie, that's really interesting because I did not know that. I'm curious how long it lasted, who was behind it, and lastly, is there any advantage to sort of bringing life back into an existing 501c3, or can't that really happen?
So and maybe Carol remembers, so we used to refer to it in its sort of end of days as Quad A. And Kelly, you might remember some of this as well. I think at some point the nonprofit status transferred to the Alpaca, which is now the Athens Art Guild.
Yeah,
you can transfer and you can realize a 501c3.
Right. That's precisely what happened. The Athens Art Guild now has that 501c3.
When is the point, if this is going to become a bigger entity, which may be the right move rather than making it Arts West centric? I don't know. But if it is, it seems to me that it would be sooner rather than later, and I'm sure you've thought of this, but that you'd want to bring together leadership from Alpaca, and you'd want to bring together, some of these other sort of informal even, as well as formal organizations to see, okay, will there be greater strength if we are all brought together? And if so, what are the advantages or disadvantages of that? And if that's the case, if it goes bigger like that, then is AMAC really needing to be leading this charge? Do you know what I mean? Because I felt this was sort of driven by Arts West, and or just the fact that we have Arts Parks and Rec Commission, right? But it seems more Parks and Rec versus the arts part. So I think there's still, I really like seeing my hands do this, by the way, on the Zoom screen. Isn't that pretty cool? Yeah. So, but no, seriously, though, I feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much. And we keep sort of going back and forth. And wait till you hear what I tell you about the mural, because it's the same sort of thing. But so I'll let you respond.
Carol, did you have something to add?
Well, yes. My concern is one of the major purposes of doing all this was to be able to have alcohol sales at Arts West. And that is a major part of it, and I think that gets lost in a lot of these models. The other sort of caveat I have is I really am uncomfortable with Arts, Parks, and Recreation getting a 501c3. And with all due respect to all the work that they do, and their legal existence is quite different than ours, but nonetheless, the arts has been the ignored and disliked stepchild from day one. And I just don't see that we would fare well with a 501c3 that's Arts, Parks, and Recreation. And I also don't think, well, I don't know this. There's been discussion about, could you have more than one venue under one 501c3, if it were the city, if several places could have the alcoholic privileges. So those are some of my concerns about all of these questions.
Yes. So to answer the alcohol piece, we did have a discussion on that, but there does need to be more fact finding in regards to the licensing. But we did talk about that particular group will apply and have a specific license that can do multiple venues, since they're under the same umbrella pretty much. So you could use an alcohol license at Arts West and also at the community center if, somebody wanted to serve alcohol at a wedding, because those happen frequently at the community center. So that is something that we did discuss, because that was something, as you said, that was part of the discussion originally. And I hear you in regards to Arts West being kind of the ugly redheaded stepchild that is siloed away from the rest of the department. I will say that I do feel like after discussions with discussions with the current director and also just the general feeling, I do have hope that Terry is trying to break down that silo and really include the arts, not just at Arts West, but also within the whole city. And so I have a lot of reservations about this part as well. But I also have more reservations about creating, and this is my personal opinion, that I feel that creating a second Friends of for the same exact department is more problematic, purely because of we're going to be competing for the same donations, competing for just the same fundraising opportunities. And, it kind of, to me, it sounds like we really are that redheaded, ugly stepchild that nobody wants to play with type thing. And so trying to collaborate, and that's why I really want somebody to be, or many people to be on that board that are arts centric, that can advocate for the arts within that organization. But that is just my personal thoughts. I am still trying to navigate what the best next steps are.
And I don't disagree with any of that. All of it makes me nervous.
I know. Rock in a hard place. We're right there. Right. Brandon, did you have anything to add?
No, not really. I mean, I think everything's been said, and I just want to make sure we're, there's a lot of ideas, and this all started with helping Arts West, and then that, because we started thinking really big, and if it doesn't help Arts West, it's easy to forget and help other stuff, and then be like, yeah, arts, because I sit on that board with the Friends of Arts Park and Recreation, and we've had those same questions, and I don't think it solves that capacity piece for the arts, because beer will be one thing and all that, but there have to be ideas there, and if there aren't other people to facilitate that, we can have an F permit, but if nobody's there to create that $1 million idea, then we won't make those funds, and I feel like that's my fear, because you're right, Carol, that was the idea. If we could get the funding from that, then they could help, but if there's not extra people, then who's going to run those projects, and who's going to be helping support that, and so I just hope we can figure out whatever that is. I love these ideas, and I think some other organizations are working on an Arts Alliance, so I feel like that's going to happen this year, whether that's here or there, but just, because that is the big end goal, but let's make sure it's Arts West, let's make sure we get something that helps that, because I see both groups kind of splitting, and Arts West is in the middle, and we're helping other stuff, and it's this is what we started for,
Right.
But yeah, so, but yeah,
well,
go ahead.
Well, two other things that the huge, like the national, whatever it's called,
National Endowment for the Arts
Foundation, that had the huge grant that they came and were talking to Athens about. That could happen if it were a countywide arts thing. That's the kind of money you could go after. And the other reminder is that these places, the community center and Arts West, can serve liquor now, but they've got to get a license for each event. And usually it's a license that people don't buy the booze, they free. And if we formed a 501c3, then the proceeds for the alcohol would go to Arts West, like the Dairy Barn. That's how they operate, and that's a major chunk of their revenue. So I'm done.
Let's see. I know Scott said that he had to leave pretty early. Did you have any thoughts before you need to leave, Scott?
Yeah, I'm really bummed that I have to leave because this is a more interesting conversation that I'm very interested in continuing this conversation. I just texted you, Brandon. I actually, a couple things. I have a present for you that I think will make you smile. But also, let's touch base this weekend. I'd like to just talk a little bit more. Plus, more of the work that I'm doing with these venues up north. They're kind of leading the charge of this SVOG money. I feel like there's some conversations that we could be having about some of this, especially when it comes to really focusing on like, okay, how can we help Arts West specifically, aside from these other things? So I don't know. I'd love to be able to help with that. And I'm sorry that I have to go. But it's really great to see you all.
Nice to see you too, Scott. Thank you.
That's worth, but I'll be in touch. And Brandon, yeah, let's talk this weekend.
Josh and Kelly, do you have any thoughts before we move on, so that way we're not running over time?
I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. I think this is great. I'm excited about the possibilities. I know it sounds like it's pretty daunting. I am curious, whatever happened to the organization that Bob started?
So the Athens Area Citizens for the Arts?
Yeah, what is that still out there somewhere floating about?
So I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't even know if they officially got 501c3 status at all. But it had started right before I came back to Athens. And so I didn't really get to know a whole lot about it, but I know that it dissolved pretty quickly after Bob's death.
Right.
Because there was nobody to really take up the helm and take up that charge.
But that paperwork and that information that he did pull together, aside from the big, there were a lot of meetings and a lot of information just from people coming together and talking about what could be, what Athens could be artistically. I mean, that's, we had a lot of conversations about the fact that we are such an artistic area, and what it could mean for just, economics of the area too. But I'm just curious. I know that I took some minutes from those meetings. I'm not sure where they ended up, but that could be some vital information for us to use in the long run.
Yeah. I know that starting at the beginning of this whole conversation this past November, Emily Prince did have like kind of the original, the original documents to create such a board. So we do have some of those that she did alter specifically for that management 501c3 that we were originally proposing back in January.
I keep forgetting the name of theirs, the one that she and Bob started. That was
the Arts Consortium, is that right?
No, that was our group. That was Bob's. That was the one I belonged to. No, she had a group that she started for Arts West years ago.
You mean the Advisory Council?
No, what was it called?
I'm gonna look it up. Sherry sent it to me because we talked about this and she was on that. Give me 1 second. I can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Brandon does that. Josh, do you have anything to add to the conversation? Questions, concerns, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm processing all this right now. We've heard from Chris Schmiel before about wanting this Arts Alliance as this bigger goal long term. I also see the need for the immediate support of Arts West. And it doesn't sound like the C6 is what we need. The C3 sounds like it. Arts Park and Rec is applying for this thing. And if we get representation on that board, and if Arts West is specifically mentioned in that mission statement and is like getting what we want out of it, I think that could work. And with less work from us, it's already happening. Now, what are the chances though that they apply for this and they don't get it? And we have to all sit down and say, okay, do we apply for something for Arts West specifically? Like, do we know if they're going to get it? Or, I mean, it's not guaranteed, right?
That I'm not 100% sure of. I mean, I always assume that as long as you have all your ducks in a row, that you are able to, get that status. It just takes a while because paperwork and going through the bureaucratic tape and things like that.
So we can sabotage our application and then prep ours in the meantime and get it done.
Don't say that.
Yeah, but I mean, I from what I'm hearing, as I'm listening to everybody and as we've been having these conversations, that to me seems like the most logical way forward since they have already applied and we don't want duplication or legal troubles. And if we get representation there, it could serve the purposes of what we need right now. And then we can continue talking about the Arts Alliance once we get, more support for Arts West. That's what I'm thinking.
Thank you. Brandon, did you ever...
I remember the name. It's CPA. Yeah, it was Corporation for Performing Arts. And it was started by Bob and Emily, and specifically to help Arts West to be able to support Arts West. And, I don't know how to describe it except for it would be an organization where that would run events at Arts West, because when things happen at Arts West, the money all goes into the city, but CPA would be able to retain the funds that would continue to be used by Arts West to fund more events.
And I'm pretty sure, I'd have to double check with Emily Prince on this, but I'm pretty sure she rebranded CPA to something else once she left Arts West.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't heard the name since she was there, so. Okay.
Well, I think we are, we're past 40 minutes. So if anybody has anything to add, feel free to shoot me an email. Happy to talk about this one-on-one with anybody, or you're welcome to, as long as one person, you're welcome to join in on our meetings on Mondays at 12 for the ad hoc committee and throw in your 2 cents. But just let me all know. Thank you, Brandon, and thank you, Leslie. We will not take up any more of your precious time. Bye-bye. Okay, moving on to the next ongoing business is the community center mural. Beth.
All right. So I took your, since our last meeting, I took some of the feedback from AMAC to the teachers. And the things that I heard you say that I took to them included that you were hoping that there, like it was reflected in the minutes, you know, that there's more representation of what makes up the Athens community, you know, landscape, basically. And so the long and the short of it is, one of the teachers who had not been who joined us a little bit later, just was not able to attend the first few meetings, happens to be pretty good at drawing, and just sort of shared with us this idea that she had. And I cannot remember if we had that for our last meeting, but everybody really kind of liked it. But that really took us in a different direction. If you recall last time, the idea was that the mural was somewhat text-centric, with you all had encouraged community with the emphasis on unity, but not just unity. And they all liked that. But then the students were going to contribute these like patchwork pieces. Well, and part of that was because we wanted the students to contribute. We were thinking about all the logistical issues that had to do with being in the current environment, in the classrooms with some students virtual, some students not, so on and so forth, social distancing, everything. Then a teacher presented an illustration that everybody really liked. And then suddenly the teachers felt like, you know what, this still, even though this is an illustration done by one of our teachers, we can still get so much value out of doing this project together. And they listed the many ways that they could do that, because they would all still have a segment of it to paint, and the whole process of creating community art and the materials that we were working with, and the list kind of goes on and on. So I said, well, I think what's really important is that the illustration, it looks very Athens-y to us, but we should make sure that that's what the kids think as well. So I asked all of the teachers to go back and create something like a word cloud or something with their students. And I'm going to share my screen here and show you a little bit. So, for example, here's, hopefully you can see this. I just put this prompt up there that we had discussed. Your favorite thing when you think about your hometown, how do you describe it to people from the outside? Things like that. I just gave them some prompts. They could work with anything they wanted to. So then it was, if you haven't worked with word clouds before, they're really fun. The students, what worked well too is because the students that are virtual, everybody can do this. They're typing in words that they think of, and it generates these word clouds. So this was one example. Then this one was, this teacher sort of rephrases like, what are icons for Athens? And by the way, the words that appear bigger in a word cloud are the words that have more, are replicated more by the students or whoever's inputting it. So obviously Stroud's Run and the bike path were bigger ideas. But then you go on. This one was kind of neat too. You can see things about hills and trees, the skate park, again, Stroud's Run. This one was also pretty cool from Fed Hawk. I'll try to make that bigger so you can see. The Hocking River came out there. Family, diversity, Joe as in Burrow, music, and let's see, I think we got, this one was from Trimble. So these were really kind of neat. And what we discovered in the end was that they were, very much what was represented in the image for the most part. There were a couple more things we realized, let's move this out, move this in. So I'm going to switch here, and I'm going to share where we kind of ended up. Let's see, this should do it. So this is where we ended up. And this mural is scaled so that it will be 8 feet tall. The space again is 12 feet tall. And it will be about 33 feet wide, which is each section of that. There are 4 sections of the garage. Each section is about 17.25 feet wide, separated by 2-foot columns. So centered on the center column, this will cover most of the 2 center sections. Okay. I know that to me, the color of the word community there looks like some sort of funny beige color. That's actually, it's going to be more of a leaning towards cream/white. That was decided on. Also, the color of the word was decided on both by the teachers and students. We had a couple different mock-ups with different colors. We had pulled, like, one was a blue, one had unity in each letter was different, like in a rainbow color where the COMM was part of a blue. And the consensus was overwhelmingly that they wanted a white/cream color for that. So what we ended up revising some things a little bit. Before, I think you probably saw there was a big bobcat in there. Did I share a picture with you guys last time? I can't remember. Chelsea, do you remember?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So this did pretty well. There was certainly the Nelsonville kids, they just had a thing of words. They didn't have the word cloud, but bricks was a very big part of it. The OU, this is sort of a tip of the hat to OU with these little, paw prints in there with the footprints representing hiking, of course, bike path. There was definitely kids both from Alexander and Fed Hawk who were talking about farming kind of stuff. By the way, I did share this a little over a week ago, a week and a half maybe, with Andrew, who took it to the mayor and some folks on that he works with. I think it was on, if there's a committee that supports Andrew's work as the assistant city service safety director. One of the feedback pieces that we got was originally there's this rock here, and there was only this one rock here with these cattails. And then we got some feedback that there was concern about how it represents runoff. but I get it, because like when I think about music, I hate it when notes appear backwards, right? Or somebody's holding their instrument the wrong way, stuff like that. So I took that back, and the illustrator added a few more rocks there too, so that the farm field wouldn't run off into the water, which could represent a Hawking or Stroud's. By the way, what we're thinking about the rock is a way to do it tastefully with like a gray on gray, but sort of like a graffiti rock in a way but it will have the school district's names on there. And the kids seemed excited by that as well. Because there was talk about food, and we knew, and if I were to show you those things again, things came up like coffee houses and Casa and Larry's Doghouse and stuff, and we knew we couldn't advertise for them, right? So we came up with the idea of having this sort of the farmers market represent the local food movement more so than a particular restaurant. So that's a nod to that. Of course, the pawpaw there. And then this is interesting. This was basically, looks like a sign. Originally, it said something like Rockbridge Trail on there in one of the first sketches, which I live right up behind Sells Park, and those who do Stroud's Run and Sells Park know that. And so that looks like that signage that you see at a park. And then there was this thought, well, hopefully you see this as saying basically welcome to Athens County, as the word gets cut off there. And the teachers really felt like this is saying sort of, it's a continuous idea. Welcome to the Athens County community. these letters are to sort of give the impression of it's evolving and it's in motion. And the bottom line is, and this is of course a minor kind of thing. The bottom line is that the teachers really felt good about this. So while this is radically different than I expected, they feel super positive about it, and they feel like it's something that they can accomplish. I think when we were starting to get closer to the idea of each of the students coming up with their own sort of individual piece, that goes in there, I think the teachers were suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, given our time frame and given the varying skill levels and everything else, that was going to be more challenging, I think, than they originally thought. So this is where we are, and I will tell you that again, when we've met, there is so much enthusiasm for it, and for that I am super excited. And while it's different than it started out, I just love the idea that there is the enthusiasm for it. And frankly, like, they keep mentioning how they've been showing it to their kids along the way and how excited the kids are. Or they've been showing it to other teachers in their building or building administrators who keep coming by and saying, like, what's it look like now? I'll show you one other thing here real quick. When we talk about dividing it up, basically, let me see if I can find what I'm looking for here. Shoot, okay, I think it'll be right here. I'm gonna go. Are you seeing my Gmail?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so it's actually, I'm gonna blow this up big. One of the teachers kind of figured out a way to sort of break up the design. And so when we get this printed on the mural cloth, the outline printed on the mural cloth, then we're gonna come together and cut in these sections, and each school district has, there's one district that's taking 2 sections, I think, or one school that's taking 2 sections, but they've all laid claims. And some of the schools, even, like, their kids said, we really want to do the tractor, and so that's how they ended up there, the tractor and the train. So it really has done what we wanted it to do as a project. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think it's going to be really pretty darn good. We're otherwise using everything the same as I described before in terms of materials, the mural cloth, and the aluminum that I described in the last meeting. One thing that we will also do, feedback that I got from Andrew and the folks he met with, or maybe I told them about this. Either way, it was received well. And that is we're going to buy just a small portion, because it's going to be very expensive, of some of the paint that is created from the acid mine runoff here. And because there are only a few colors, well, I shouldn't say a few, but there are some basic colors, but those colors can easily be incorporated into the mural. And the teachers are like excited to be able to tie that into a teachable thing for their kids, to be able to use this paint that's created from the acid mine runoff and everything else. So I got to tell you, I mean, this has been really fun for me, and I am so glad that I took this project on. And I think the teachers, they were slow to warm up at first, but now they're like, they just want to keep this going, this networking thing going, and that just really makes me feel great. So that's my update, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Beth. My only concern, even though I absolutely love it, is that there's no music representation on it.
I know.
That's my only concern. But other than that, I think it's fantastic. It looks great.
Yeah, and the music piece didn't come out till the students mentioned it, right? And then because we're up against this timeline, it didn't happen. And but, as they all said, they're thinking about like, well, maybe next year we can do another section of the wall. And, so they have hopes and plans for the future. But of course, Chelsea, I'm with you on that. I wish it had been incorporated somehow, but it just kind of wasn't meant to be given the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything to add? I know we only have 10 minutes left to get through a massive agenda. So
yeah, I felt I had a lot to explain, and I'm sorry if I took too long, but it really, changed so much. And I had to explain a lot to Andrew about that too. And I wanted you to understand the reasons for the steps along the way. So I'll stop.
Thanks, Beth.
Hey, Beth, thanks for taking this on. Just when the call first came in, I didn't know quite what to do with it. So you've done a beautiful job. Thank you.
Well, it really, really and truly has been my pleasure. So thank you all. Yeah, this has been cool.
And I think you did a great job also of letting them really guide the project and let that happen organically, because buy-in is what you're looking for. You want them to have ownership over it. We don't want to kind of like tell them what to do, So.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Josh. That has been the challenge, walking that line a little bit. And and I really do feel like they feel this is theirs. And so that's cool.
Right. And did you get the sizing worked out? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. That's a little bit of a stretched version.
It's slightly stretched. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, but we're going to go with it.
All right. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It looks good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Beth. We will go ahead and move on to Key to the City. Any updates, Kelly?
Yes, as a matter of fact. So I've been trying to find different artists that can help us out. And so it's kind of going with two different types of keys. So we're going to work with the makerspace to make less expensive keys that are reproduction of the key out of plastics from Athens. They have a way to repurpose recycled materials into something. So that's one part of the equation. So it'll go to less notable people, but people who the mayor wants to recognize for their contributions. And then I just found an artist yesterday, Brian Alloway, who's a professor of art at Hocking College, who has said that he can do this. He can make a metal reproduction of the key. So I got a little bit of information from the mayor as to size, because Brian wanted to know how big it was. So we sent him a photo that showed like a penny next to it and a ruler, so that he has an idea how big it is. But we're still waiting to hear from the mayor as to a timeline and how many he wants. And, I guess my next step is to try to get the mayor involved in a conversation with Brian so that we can move forward with exactly what the mayor wants, how many he wants, what kind of metal he wants to use, all the particulars about it. Carol and I had thrown around the idea of maybe talking to a different artist about creating a plaque that it would be adhered to, or a box, or some other than just here's a key. What do you do with it? So there are several really talented woodworkers in our area, and so once I get a clear picture of what the mayor wants it to look like, I will reach out to those artists as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. That's exciting news.
Yeah.
I hate to cut it short, but we're
okay.
running low on time here. So we're going to go ahead and move on to some ongoing commission business. I will touch briefly on the art inventory, and Josh is welcome to add anything if he has anything. But Josh, Andrew and I met, 3 weeks ago or so, and we have started some documents within Google Drive about capturing all of the information in regards to art inventory. We're starting out with the city properties and buildings, and then we'll go out from there. So we'll touch base a little bit more next time. Josh, did you have anything to add on that? Nope. Okay, so then we're going to move to the mural walk that Josh has.
I have a quick comment.
Sure.
About the inventory. I've had a couple of calls from a woman, I think she's in Washington State or something, but she is interested in talking to the city about protection of art in terms of how to mitigate wear on different kinds of surfaces. She's an expert in like sculptures, murals, stained glass, different things. And at this point, I'm just telling you, she's out there and she's going to be asking us if she might get involved in the process. And part of our process is not only inventory, but to assess condition. So I think that if it's not too expensive, and I did tell her that the city is in dire financial straits, but that we're interested to talk about it, and maybe eventually it'll happen. So
great. Thank you. That's awesome to hear. Can you perhaps send me that contact information or her name, just so we can make sure and put it with that art inventory materials for when we get to that process of assessment?
Yes, but she was supposed to send me an email before this meeting and she hasn't yet. So I just have her phone number at this point. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. Josh, sorry we're leaving you with so little time.
Yeah, y'all are so generous. 3 minutes. Wow. All right. So Nancy Stevens wants to make a mural walk, a dedicated mural walk on the Map Athens project. Y'all are familiar with the Map Athens project, right? Okay. They currently have some murals in different categories in their art tour, but they'd like to create a separate mural walk. I'm going to share my screen here and share the list that I have. Let's see, can you see the list I've got here?
Yes.
Okay, so in the architecture and installations tab, they have the graffiti wall mentioned. They've got 3 Ohio University wall murals mentioned in a separate tab. And then in their around town tab, they actually have quite a few murals here. So the East Side mural, Stimson Avenue, West Side, Uptown, and the bridge and tunnel murals. So she wants, as you know, some of them have just a handful of items on these tours. They can have dozens though. And she wants us to come up with a list of murals as well as information about these murals. So like a few sentences about who painted them, when, why, and or any themes, as well as some intro text. So that's the first task is like figuring out what we want to include. And then I can start to work with some of you and other community members to gather the info we need. And then she also wanted me to mention that she's open to other tours as well. If we wanted to have some kind of other art tour or history culture tour. Chelsea, you had mentioned one. Did you want to tell us about the one you had thought about?
I was thinking about like working with the Mount Zion Preservation Historical Society. I'm probably butchering that name. because I am not involved, but I think working with them and getting a little bit more information on what they've been doing, but also about the Black experience in Athens, Berry Hotel and Black Wall Street and things like that, and making sure that that gets added, since that is a huge part of our culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot we could do. Beth?
Yeah, there's also that Keith Wild mural there by the wine store between the pharmacy and the wine shop. And actually, you probably already thought of this, but I mean, I would think that Keith probably knows every mural in town.
Yes.
Frankly, we've got the mural on the pump station that he also did. The little funny frog thingy.
There's all kinds of little really wonderful painted pieces all over town that are on private property.
Right.
That could be included as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there are more murals on campus. I mean, there's one in the first floor when you enter Glidden Hall on the ground floor. Although my understanding is it's kind of beat up. I'm not sure if that's.
Oh.
My understanding is it's there. It needs some repair, so I don't know if you necessarily want to. And I don't know if they want them that are those that are. Although you've got the couple others in Baker, but.
So there might be so many that we can't include them all, or we may not want to include them all. So we might be a little judicious. Once we get a big list, we can narrow it down.
Yeah.
But at this stage, I'm in the process of just making this list.
Yeah.
So since we're kind of out of time, do you think you all could think of some murals and send me a list of any murals? I'll send an email with this list, and then you can add to it and send me any others you think of, and we can create a big list. And then at the next meeting, we can narrow it down and start to fill in info. Does that sound like a good plan?
Perfect. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
Okay, so there's two things besides Josh's mural email that he's going to be sending out that I have requests for. I would love to have a AMAC representation on the Arts, Parks, and Rec Advisory Board, just to be able to listen and discuss those arts things that are going on. We don't need to choose anybody right now. I would love to have maybe everybody chooses a month that they go, so that way not one person's doing it. So we're going to think about that. Carol's muted. I see that her mouth was moving. You're muted still.
I just think that's a good idea to rotate, so they constantly are seeing that additional people are involved here and keep it going. I think that would be more effective than one person that sits in the back.
Great. Thanks, Carol. I also really like the rotating one. I will go ahead. I'm pretty sure I'm available next Thursday. If not, I will reach out and see if anybody else is available. Moving on.
So when are their meetings? What Thursday?
I believe they're the third Thursday. I cannot recall the time off the top of my head, though.
Okay.
I should look that up. But I can, I'm going to send out an email as well, because I would like everybody to review the ordinance, the AMAC ordinance, and go through the list of kind of the jobs and duties that are listed there. And I'd like to have a short discussion next time on, what are we doing? What are we doing well? What aren't we doing? So that way we can really focus on what the original intent of AMAC was. I will send all that information out. Is there any announcements or other business before we say goodnight?
Don't think.
Okay, hearing none, I'm going to say that the next meeting is Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 from 5:30 to 7 right here on Zoom or Facebook Live if that's where you're at. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Oh.
I'm going to go with Beth because I saw her hand first. Second?
Second.
Or we're going to say Josh because he said something. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.